made is we mentioned, I told you earlier about a mayor of Paducah that I ambushed on, it's on YouTube, so go to the city commission meeting, August 28th, 2012. So in the meeting, we were going to hold that night, Mike was over on the other side of the commission. I had a suit on and I was doing great. Well, as soon as the meeting started, the mayor said, we ain't talking about any nuclear worker tonight. And I think Mike's attitude is, I can tell right now, 6 years later, he's totally changed. Because behind me, which I didn't represent Mike, but I'm getting ready to ambush the mayor of Paducah, Bill Paxton. Well, out of the blue from the side, here comes Mike running behind, and I'm standing at the podium. I'm looking at the mayor. Well, here comes Mike around me. He stole the thunder, but watch it. He turned and said, you are nothing but, well, Mike, it was something like, you're nothing but a liar. Well, it kind of caught me off guard, because I knew I was going to catch it too. So on that day, everybody go to August 28th, and you'll see Mike bolt out of the city hall and leave me right there all by myself with the mayor. Which, if he had stayed in there, we had a show coming, because by the end of the show, there was a young lady that I really respect, Carol Gall, city commissioner, and finally she got so fed up with it that she said, now Mayor, we're going to meet with all the nuclear workers, right? And Gary's going to be there with us. We're going to have a big workshop. She didn't last to the November election. Do you see what I'm getting at? When you do this, you've got to stop before you do it and then ask yourself, if I do this, maybe I need to do this first. And if you'll do that, and it's something that I didn't realize how to do it, but I will tell you, I got to give Attorney Thomas Osborne the credit for it. Now, he didn't want me to mention his name, but I'm sorry, Tom, you're going to get credit for it. You had, and it was real simple. Think outside the box. That's it. Don't sit there and jump on your first impulse, because think next. And we've got a guy back here that I know has already thought many a time like that. We're getting ready, we're going to talk about it. I now want to switch to Merritt. Would you mind standing up? This is one of my classmates at Merritt State University. And Merritt, you were in the military.
Yes.
What division were you in, or you're in the Army?
Yes, Medical Service Corps.
Okay. Now Merritt is. Last night we were there with Vina. We were there late. Tag, or what was it, on Facebook or something, Messenger. And he asked me if we were going to be here, where he could get here. So I got up and I think this morning I said, if you leave right now, you'll be a guest speaker. Okay. But anyway, he's here. He drove all the way from Owensboro. He's a veteran. Not only is a veteran, he's a sick nuclear worker. And not only is a sick nuclear worker, he's already told me enough that he has been cheated out of his compensation. And we can darn sure figure out what they've done to him. Because I will share something with you. One melanoma on one of our co-workers at the plant was all she had to pass 50% probability of causation and be awarded her $150,000. Does that sound unusual to you?
Yeah, I've got 5.
You got 5 melanomas. Remember what I was telling you earlier about unequal application of the law was illegal? We are dealing with a political cronyism that's led by Bill Paxton. Well, not the Paxton. Paxtons have got to follow McConnell. They can't do anything. You don't see a Paxton Media Group person anywhere. And in fact, the city of Paducah can't be trusted, because I had to document right there on that tape recorder on the way here, watching in my rear view mirror with that .40 caliber automatic right here, that I didn't want any city police officer, pulling all of you all over for tickets. And I didn't say, do you understand? I said, that's all you need to know. And I hung up on it. So if they're going to track me with them, they're going to realize that there's another person. And we talked about this, David, this morning.
A little bit.
A little bit. David, stand up, David. And we're going to come back to you. There's another man right here that watched 4 city police officers while I'm on the phone to the police dispatch run across a parking lot, and if he hadn't been with me, you'd have heard a rumor that somebody had to shoot me because I was out of control, right?
Right, I don't doubt that.
You hear that?
Don't doubt it.
I don't doubt that. Evelyn Jeffers, 89-year-old, well, let's call you 85, how's it? She pulled right in the parking lot behind me with David standing, and she came around me as the cops threw me behind, tore my rotator cuff, and she saw it. Did you say yes?
Yes, I saw him do it to me twice.
Yeah, well, that's right. So here we had my own hometown city police department, which later on we confirmed through Vinacali earlier that the mayor and the city manager did this to me. But she was in Portsmouth when they finally got worried. Well, here's what I did to them. They knew they did it. So I went down with one of my workers, walked into the McCracken County Courthouse to obtain an arrest warrant for the mayor of City Paducah, Brandy Hartness. Well then, when you all know what meerkats are. Well, they stand up and look like this. Well, everybody in that county attorney's office turned around, they talked a little loud, and they said, I'm sorry, but you're going to have to file that with the Kentucky State Police. I said, what? I didn't really understand that. So by the time I left, I went over to my attorney's office, Will Counts. We met with him. I got home about 2 hours later, and the news flashed on TV. Mayor fires the city manager, Jim Pepperson. And then they paid him $250,000, and they didn't even have to fire him, and he could have got that. But the point I'm making is all of this is connected to corruption. Mitch McConnell controls the claims money's been denied, the claims money is then transferred in from the treasury instead of it going to Merritt Lake, me, Nelson. He lost his son. He was on top of a process building that had plutonium, neptunium, americium venting right out the roof. 2 members of your family have cancer.
All 3 of us.
All 3 of you. Well, that's right. You're now.
Yeah.
Do you know the odds? Merritt, listen, Merritt has got your safety and health, right? Merritt knows what I know. 1 times 10 to the minus 6 is 1 in a million chances of cancer. And I think, I'm not a statistical person, but that's kind of like you'll find that statistics, it's a high rate if it's over that. Well, let me tell you, George is gone. He went out to Bradford Road within a few miles of Ruby English. It's 80% of the households have cancer in them. 80%, a mile from the plant. So Merritt is telling me things that now that I do this, I'm kind of like Trey Galley. And I let people tell me, and if you're DOE, you're in trouble because I set them up to confess to the fraud. Because they don't want you paid. McConnell doesn't want you paid. He wants your money, and he wants to take the credit. And when that lady that's sleeping right now, Janice Butler, ladies, bye Janice, you have a good evening. When she stood up in front of Mitch McConnell down at his office, she basically put him on the spot. And I'm proud of her because we're on the internet. We'll link all of you to it, right, Janice?
All right.
So what I'm getting at is, collectively, we're not stopping. Individually, they win. But they've never been around me. And Merritt and I go way back. But to hear him say he's got his cancers and wasn't compensated, somebody is hiding something.
Gary?
Yeah, you want to come on?
Sure. If I got time, I'll give you a little bit of my
Merritt, right up here.
Okay.
Down here, it's kind of scratchy.
All right. I'm from Trenton, New Jersey, born and raised, and went to school at Murray State. And then after Murray State, I majored in biology at Murray State, went into the Army. And I came back to Murray and later and I taught. But after my stint in the Army, I worked for Kentucky OSHA as an industrial hygienist and sampled plants all over the state. And then I took a job at Union Carbide as their industrial hygienist. And my BTA was sampling, which they weren't doing a whole lot in industrial hygiene, personal sampling and other types of sampling. So I started sampling. After my stint I sampled there from 77 to 1980, about August 1980. And from then I went over to Murray State University as a professor and taught occupational safety and health, toxicology, occupational diseases, hearing and acoustic control, industrial hygiene sampling strategies. And I did that for 10 years. Still in the reserve unit as a medical service officer. And then I wrote a grant, and it was a big grant, the biggest grant Murray ever got, $1 million grant. And in fact, I got the award from the governor at that time to be a Kentucky colonel, because I brought the biggest grant. And the grant was to train workers who dealt with hazardous materials. So the grant really grew. And I moved the grant to the University of Louisville, where we had a branch there, and I taught 10 years at Murray and 10 years at University of Louisville, teaching workers how to deal with hazardous materials, all types, radiation, biological, physical hazards. From there, I joined the United States Public Health Service, and at the time there was nothing available as far as the position, because it was between presidents and they froze everything, except they didn't freeze two government agencies. One was a Bureau of Prisons and the other was Indian Health Service. I didn't know anything about Indian Health Service, but I took a job with the Indian Health Service and found myself out on an Indian reservation, a Sioux reservation, for 3 years in South Dakota, and I was the director of their environmental health program. From there I went to Alaska as director of their environmental health program at Kanakanak Hospital in Dillingham, Alaska. And I met someone up there, and they thought I would be perfect for a job down in Washington, D.C. And I took a job with the Indian Health Service headquarters as the director of institutional environmental health for the whole United States. All the Indian hospitals, all the clinics and prisons. Anyhow, time passed quickly, and other opportunities, being in D.C., where all the government agencies were, I took a position with USDA and the Food Anti-Terrorism Program. And from there, after 9/11, I took a position with Homeland Security. And I was the Force Health Protection Scientist for Homeland Security, which involved developing standards to protect workers where there was no standard developed. So we had to come up on the ground to protect these workers. After that, I went to work for it's funny, the end of my career, I went to work for the Center for Medicare and Medicaid, where you could really see the statistics of who's getting harmed in this country and how much it's costing. So this past February, I retired. And now I'm looking back on all these different experiences and how they interface and connect with each other. And just a couple of comments I want to make about some of the comments some of the gentlemen made here. Mike, I think he's left here, the guy with the white beard. He mentioned about how tough it was to always do the right thing. And I'll certainly have to agree, and I think you all have to agree, if it wasn't tough, Adam and Eve would still be in the Garden of Eden, right? So it is tough doing the right thing. And when you rely on the law, the one thing to keep in mind, a lot of people believe, the law and the blind justice with the scales, the law is about justice. As Gary mentioned, the law is about precedence. So this is why it's so important for you guys to fight, to set this precedent. Don't have the other guys the ones who are making money off this set a precedent to say that what you experience is not relevant. So by doing this effort you're doing here, you will set a precedent and say it is relevant. People's health is relevant. One of the things that really struck me with this whole issue right here was I trained everybody in the plant at Union Carbide on handling PCBs, polychlorinated biphenyls. I've run into people at the mall occasionally and they say, "Oh, Mr. Lake, how do you do it? I remember you put on this training," and I didn't remember them because there was so many people I trained. I trained them in lead exposure, nickel exposure, respiratory protection was a big thing. And during that training, I always remember telling them that we had one of the best emergency response crews in the country at Union Carbide. And if we had a spill, it was going to be cleaned up quick, and not to worry because it was low-grade uranium. I remember these words, in Portland, if they have a spill, some people are going to glow at night. See, I was told it wasn't the hot stuff, it wasn't the plutonium out there. So I move along my career, and one day I find myself in around 2000 in DC, in Rockville, Maryland, in the headquarters there, and a newspaper. Someone puts a newspaper on my desk. I pick it up from New York Times. Headlines: they find plutonium out at Paducah Gaseous Diffusion Plant. I took this story to Murray for years, for 10 years, Louisville for 5 years, and preached how there was no plutonium out at that plant and how it was safe. And I felt like I'd done all these people an injustice because someone lied to me. One other thing I want to make clear about your sampling: don't put a whole lot of faith in sampling. Sampling is a really big word. Someone mentioned about the air sampling. That's not wipe sampling.
Gotcha.
Tables
Exactly.
over the door jams. At Union Carbide, my office was right next to the environmental health and health physics guys. They went out and sampled the grass, the soil, the water, the milk from cows. All right, they went out with Geiger counters. I would sample in the room where they melted the gold, where they disassembled all the bombs. I had sampling on the people there. It sounds all good, doesn't it? What happens to the samples? Who interprets the samples? What is the standard they use to set the Geiger counter? Who calibrates the Geiger counter? Wouldn't it be to advantage to you and your doctor if you could go in there on a weight reduction program and calibrate his scale to make you look thin? So the calibration is really important. All the samples I took, environmental samples, I never saw how they were dissected in the laboratory, analyzed in the laboratory. That was always way up here on the food chain. And the health physics, it's the same thing. So, I had great faith in the company. It was a marvelous health program they put together from the windshield appraisal. You saw health physics, you saw safety, you saw environmental health, you saw industrial hygiene, you had occupational physicians, occupational nurses. You said, holy cow, this is a dream for a lot of industries who may have a nurse if they're lucky. But I was told when I got there that this plant will operate without consideration to profit. So their only consideration was making that product. And remember where radiation evolved from. It evolved from a highly secretive era. And that, unfortunately, that mentality held over at Union Carbide when they first started. Very secretive. We didn't want the enemy to find it. I remember that when we were doing the change out in 78, 79, when they moved these big reactors outside, they had to put covers on them because the Russian satellites could take a picture of those flanges and tell the exact diameter. They couldn't diffuse their uranium as good as we could because we had better machinery. So we had to cover them when we moved it from one building to another. So everything about that plant was secretive, and anything to interfere with the production of radioactive material was something they did everything in their power to avoid, including truth. So it's unfortunate I have to go up here and admit that. I used to think Carbide was the place to work, but not too long after that I realized that. I went back there on a couple visits and did some lectures and some other stuff, and I had a lot of students who went out there and worked. And I think if I wrote my memoirs, they'd probably cut my pension off.
Not yet.
I know too much, but keep up the fight, and remember about the law. It's a precedent. You guys, gals out here are about to set a precedent for that would equate to justice. My father was a very successful man, one of the greatest men I've ever known. And it's funny, as you age, some of the things comes back that they tell you. And my dad worked for the state of New Jersey. He was the head of unemployment compensation for the whole state, developed a program in Puerto Rico, and dealt with a lot of people, false records, trying to cheat the government out of money or something. And he always told me this. He said, Merritt, remember this, nothing is on the level. Keep that in mind. Be suspicious. Don't be negative, but know how to find the truth and know how to see the truth. And a lot of you older people in here can look at a person when they're talking to you, look at their eye contact, and have a real good feel if there's truth coming at you. Don't forget that. That's a real good gift that you earned over the years. Thank you.
I want to tell you, this is kind of like divine intervention, because I knew from my neighbor that we knew each other. Merritt and I knew each other back. And by the way, put your arm on. You see that? He can still outjump me because everybody says I can't put we played basketball together at Murray, and then we did too much. But I didn't know until last night that Merritt was going to be here. So what I did was shotgun everything to say we're going to be here from 9 o'clock to 9 o'clock. So you all are being treated to somebody that just walks in. And I don't have the background he's got. I'm just a former Lockheed Martin solid waste license landfill manager that knows that you got to characterize your waste. What we're going to be able to do is share. Because all you have to do, and Merritt, I've got a website that all you do is put Gary Vanderbilt Commonwealth Environmental Services in that computer and do a search. And in this room are all my close friends, and all I can tell you is, and there's my card, we haven't communicated yet till today. But all I can say is, we're getting ready, you're going to be part of it if you wish. Because what I've seen happen to him, what I've seen, and what he's telling me is, I knew he was out there. I just didn't know where he was going and what he was doing. But for God's sakes, think about this. He has been training the very people that I knew were being poisoned. And I knew Merritt, I became a whistleblower. The DOE decided to put me on the whistleblower protection list. Because I wasn't going to put bad stuff in the landfill, ripper waste. You know all about ripper waste. If you do that, and your manager says, "Oh, we'll give you a bonus," the bonus is 5 years in the penitentiary. Okay, think about it. So you're put in a situation that nobody, and all these kids out there right now are in the buildings, where the dust is so bad, the plutonium is so bad, and they're killing the kids. In a 50-mile radius. I've said it this morning, but I want Merritt to hear it. The young lady who I represent, her husband, because he was poisoned with a plutonium across a river, and it's the same plutonium, Merritt, that came from Russia, HEU. This gentleman right here will show the documents one of these days. I don't know.
One of these days. Very, very soon, probably.
Yeah, very soon.
You'll at least be able to
I've
see
asked him not to do this.
You may be able to distribute them online. I mean,
Yeah.
I've given you a good
He actually
amount.
found them, but don't go too far with. Remember what we're saying? I don't have to hit you, because we don't want you to get the stuff out. Because everything that we do, that Merritt knows what I'm doing it for, is to protect the source of the data. And you're 30 years old. They're gonna They're black. I don't care if they blacklist me. I've got a 300 million ton landfill. I mean, a 300 million ton limestone quarry. I'm not a Vanderbilt, but I may soon have enough money to be a Vanderbilt, okay? That's been kind of a facetious.
Can I ask him a question?
Yes, you can.
I was told yesterday on a conference call with the national groups, I belong to like 50-some environmental groups, and I was told yesterday that I asked them, how come we're not considered as high-level waste because we have plutonium spread all through the plant? And they said I would have to go to Congress to get the ruling changed for Paducah and Portsmouth on the waste. But we've had plutonium since '53, and we weren't told until '99 when Paducah and Portsmouth broke the story in '99. So how come they don't consider us as high-level waste?
They do. You're just arguing with the wrong people.
On a national level, on DOE level, they do not.
But again, you're arguing with the national level and DOE. They're never going to be, and I didn't mean to interrupt. You're assuming that you have an audience that's honest. Well, the more you tell them is what I'm trying to get you all to not do, because they already know. So when you go in and repeatedly argue, and you heard today, the whistleblower that Mike talked about was Bud Jenkins. I represent Bud Jenkins. He and his wife both. They died, and they sold their money just like they're stealing $15,000. By the way, Merritt, the conversion of that money, Vina, is $3 billion just for Paducah. We're coming to your area. We're coming because I'm 70 years old. I just had a birthday, by the way. Did you get your 70?
July.
All right. Well, you're older than me.
I'm asking him since he took the testing and stuff. How do we get that changed? When you got plutonium, that's high-level waste. And now the government is trying to change all the site's waste and reclassify their waste so they can put high-level waste in low-level places.
Okay, hold on. I'm going to answer it for you. You can't change anything without Congress approving it. You can't change anything. Huh?
This has gone to Congress.
Well, what I'm trying to tell you is we can't get distracted. This is what they want you to do. They're going to throw out there and say highly enriched uranium. They're going to mess around with the titles, but we both know, Merritt and I both know, right now the international law defines HEU and LEU. What we've done at Paducah, and Merritt has a conscience that thank goodness he shows up here, we've identified, and I don't see any more of my, Stanley's here, and we've got Bobby. You're not going to be able to take off on that kind of a deal because you don't have the time and the manpower. If you're trying to fight DOE.
The problem is our whole compensation bill started at Paducah and Portsmouth.
Well, hold on.
Because we had plutonium, which is a high-level waste. How can they get by with continue killing all of us and not admit that they have a high-level waste problem? And we've had, both sites have had plutonium since '53.
Yeah, but hold on, no, but that's not what we're talking about now. Merritt's going to see the 53. You got Merritt, this lady has got more record than 50 for 53 on. What she hasn't got is the copy of the False Claims Act violation, the key tam that triggered this sick worker program from 4 of my co-workers at Paducah. Chuck DeShell, Rad Tech, or radiation technician, Bud Jenkins, and they actually bankrupted him and stole half of his wife's money as she died on her deathbed. And that was from the Resource Center, so listen to me. If you know that the Resource Center is the lead villain, culprit, and I've got Stan Jones back here, we hold hearings, and it's kind of like Stan's been there, and I kind of do, I got a transcript the other day, it's like a tactic. So what you have to know is when you're asking how do you do something, you're not going to go in and be able to start a program fighting the government without you losing track of what we're doing here.
Well, we've been fighting the program since '99.
Yeah, but I'm just trying to tell you.
I was just kind of asking him, how do we go about to get that back out there where it's supposed to be?
You don't do it. We're the NWA, Nuclear Whistleblowers Alliance, which Vine is one of our members. will not get distracted in that direction. We're only working to help the nuclear workers get their EEOI-CPA compensation based on what you are saying, the plutonium killed us. All right? Now you know, you understand?
Jerry, when we got this bill in, we became an SEC site because they couldn't prove how much we were exposed to. They never took urinalysis, sometimes for a whole year. So they don't know how much we were exposed to. But they do know we were exposed to plutonium, but yet they don't know how much. And for some reason, it just got completely washed out.
But remember what Mike said, stop going down that trail?
I've been on this
The more you
trail.
want to argue that trail,
Yeah.
you're NWA, and I appreciate what you're saying.
But I'm also National Nuclear Workers for Justice and PREF. I have 2 other groups
Yeah,
that I
I
work with.
understand, and you can do anything you want. Take one of those agencies and go forward.
Well, that's what we've
I'm
been
trying to tell you, we don't want to go there right now because we haven't, as Mick Harrison, my attorney is in the whistleblower case, and when you go down, and by the way, I've got so many court cases that you'll never believe, that are all documented, and if you're honest and your integrity is there, you can see why I didn't want to go back to the plant, and when they came after me, I had to get out of there to do this. So what I'm trying to tell you is, when you go down those true trails, we've got to sign, you've got to take off that on your own, because we're not in the business of trying to convince Congress or anybody else that that's wrong to do that, because guess what you've just done? You've taken a new trail. And you're stopping the focus on...
This is the trail in 1999, when the government admitted that they did this to all of us.
Yeah.
And they dropped it. They stuck up that beryllium bill, and they dropped the plutonium. I mean, the beryllium bill did too, because it's compensating workers.
I didn't catch them until the last few years. I've been doing it since
wait a minute.
You remember this document right here?
Yeah.
Nobody had this document until last September, and I found it.
Well,
Nobody.
I have a lot of documents.
No, I'm not, listen to me. I appreciate that. But nobody has this document that puts Mitch McConnell on this team that caught the plutonium. Right here. Merritt will get a copy of this. But what I'm trying to tell you is, we're staying focused on the NWA for the abuse of the sick workers, abuse of David, abuse of anybody, Stan, prostate cancer. They pay one person who works in this program and never went into the process building, and they won't pay him.
Well,
Now this is the man that showed
I
it.
worked here at Paducah, and did I smoke a pack of cigarettes?
No, that's it. We overturn that. That's all. You're bringing up something that you're not familiar with in the sick worker program, because you don't have me.
I'm in the sick worker program.
I know, but wait, I am too. But hold on, and so is Merritt. But listen to me carefully. You don't have You don't have a counterpart like me in Hunting at Portsmouth. What you do have is, we're the canary in the cage. And Merritt, to me, is a blessing that he showed up today, because my neighbor said, I wish I could get a hold of Merritt, and I wish I could do this. And Johnny Knight, by the way, came in and went back to Costa Rica. So all of this was set up within a 2-week time frame. And I think we did pretty good, even though I'm bragging. And what I'm telling you is, save that, because we don't want to discuss it out here in the open. I'm not saying you haven't got a heck of a noble effort here. What I'm saying is, you got so much that we want to bring this letter. Bobby, do you remember the interview we had here in Paducah? Right here, this is an exhibit.
This time last year.
There you go. It's what we're calling it, Vina. We had our first annual Nuclear Whistleblower Alliance meeting last year. We knew we had to do the enhanced. We are an army, and I'll guarantee you, when we're done, there's going to be 1,000 whistleblowers. Do you know what scares DOE? A whistleblower. You're a whistleblower.
I know.
Collectively, when you see the Rocky Flash team and this document, it means that your SEC period is today, not ended in 92. This is one document that when I saw it, you have to look at the chronological timeline. Then you say, well, Mitch McConnell knew in 2000 when the 4 nuclear workers, nobody else filed that false claims. Bill Campbell, I can call him right now and I'll let you talk to him. I've got him on my quick dial. He's DOJ, U.S. Attorney, and he was the one in my landfill office in 98. Now, we didn't know what he was doing, but Bill and I became friends because he knew that my records showed that I did everything exactly the way it was supposed to do. But by doing that, you don't win friends at DOE or Bechtel. Now, I had no problem with Lockheed. So Merritt's going to be one of the best things that ever happened, and he's just a drop-in today, but gosh darn, I'm glad he did.
I was just wondering, you talked about that PCB oil, I just wondered if it was radioactive oil.
One thing.
We don't want to say that, right? Mina, you keep going right back. We don't want him, listen, we don't want you asking him a question about was it radioactive, because guess who's watching this video? DOE and DOJ. They defend DOE. So save it. Don't go on Facebook about it.
I can edit that out.
It's
So-
well known.
No, you did it? You let it out? I mean, you hadn't said anything.
I could edit that out. You know.
Oh yeah, but don't worry about that. We're not going to do it.
I put all this stuff on my Facebook.
Well, we don't.
I don't keep nothing.
Number one, what he just said about PCBs, we haven't even talked yet. I know where the PCB drums are buried. Bill Campbell knows I know. So save it. It's cradle to grave, right?
Right.
Now, I'm just telling you, this man knows the RCRA like I do and the PCB TSCA regulation.
One thing I got hammered into me, I learned all along my career, but really hammered into me when I was in DC working on Hurricane Katrina on the formaldehyde in trailers. I was a point man for that. And I got in front of Congress so many times and got beat up. And you know, I brought the science with me, and I soon learned that environmental science may be the cornerstone for your argument, but the whole rest of the house is political science.
You hear that?